What's up, guys? I'm Nobody Special, and I hope you like shortages because that's what you're getting, more shortages, courtesy of the good folks at the Chinese Communist Party, who have now instituted rolling blackouts throughout the country, which is shutting down factories, which ought to go nicely hand in hand with the backlog at U.S. ports and the shortage of truck drivers and all the other shortages going on in the economy. You ready? Hit it. Thank you for joining me. I'm Jack Gamble, and I'm Nobody Special. And if you're sick and tired of hearing about the supply chain grinding to a halt and backlogs and congestion at ports, you're really not going to like this one, because now we've got rolling blackouts in China. That's right, the largest manufacturing hub in the world, China, now doesn't have enough power to keep their grid alive, and so they're cutting power to factories and to other producers at seemingly random intervals for random amounts of time, and it's happening all over the country. And if you think the shortages is bad now, wait till it starts hitting the production. You see, right now, all the shortages have been on the demand side. All the shortages have been caused by people buying so much stuff, and the ports have been unable to handle it, and the trucks have been unable to handle it. Well, now the factories can't handle it either. Now, before we get too much into this, guys, I have to ask you, please, remember to hit that like button, subscribe to my channel, hit that notification bell. It really helps me out, and I would be forever in your debt. Now, what is going on in China? Why are they suddenly unable to power their country? Now, China gets about 50% of its electricity from coal. All right, so they're very dependent on coal for power. Well, China also has price controls in place. China tells their power companies, you are only allowed to sell your power for this much. All right, so the power companies can't just raise the price of the power when the fuel gets more expensive. We've seen coal prices double this year. Well, even though coal prices have doubled, the Chinese power companies can't raise their prices, which means those power plants are losing money. And because they're losing money, they're starting to shut down. They're starting to have conveniently timed maintenance outages and other things going on, because you can't force a business to operate at a loss. You just can't. Businesses are there to make money. And price controls don't work, Chinese Communist Party. How many times does history have to demonstrate this? When you implement price controls, you cause shortages, because the solution to shortages is higher prices. If you don't let people raise their prices during a shortage, guess what? The shortage gets worse, and that's what we're seeing with the power situation in China. But it's a little bit more nuanced than even that. It's not just because they can't raise their prices, and it's not just because the price of coal has doubled. You see, China also threw a fit recently, because Australia, a few months ago, asked the world to look into the origins of the COVID-19 pandemic. You know, that little virus that originated conveniently close to a virology lab in Wuhan. Yeah, that one. Well, Australia asked the world to look into the origins that we all know what happened, or we all suspect, and it's pretty obvious what happened. Well, China didn't like that. China didn't like Australia asking questions like that. So China, who typically gets 10% of their coal from Australian imports, threw a fit on the international stage and said, you know what, Australia, we're not buying your coal anymore. Well, now China's running out of coal. Funny how that works. When you play games with your energy supply because you don't like people asking questions about the plague you may have created and unleashed on the world, decimating the global economy and killing millions of people. So now you have coal prices are rising astronomically in China. They've cut themselves off from one of their main sources. And it's happening right around the time we're starting to see production in Chinese coal mines go down because of a spate of safety incidents and a sudden interest in the Chinese Communist Party and climate change. You'll pardon my skepticism if I don't really believe the Chinese Communist Party is legitimately interested in fighting climate change. Call me crazy. But since these power outages are going on, let's look into it a little bit and let's see what this might mean for the global economy. And we are shrinking, my big fat melon of a head. And again, we talked about how, oh my goodness, we already have these supply chain problems. How could they get any worse? Well, this is the port of Long Beach and Los Angeles, and every one of these little dots is a container ship, and you will forgive me if I'm not counting these. There are now just way too many to count. All right, so the problem at ports has not gotten any better. Oh, and let's look on the other side of the country at the port of Savannah, Georgia. And it looks like we still have between 25 and 30 ships lined up outside of Georgia, too. So the condition at U.S. ports is not getting any better. And this while this problem in China with the power outages may actually alleviate the congestion at U.S. ports a little bit, it's for the wrong reason, because that means we're going to have a hard time getting the ships loaded on the other side of the ocean now, which really just makes our supply chain problems a lot worse. But here's the article in the Washington Post. China's power outage shut down factories, fuels climate goal pushback. Last Friday, the lights went out across northeast China. Cars piled up at intersections under blacked out spotlights. Residents took to social media to complain about needing to walk up dozens of flights of stairs to get home, and sales of candles increased tenfold, according to state media. Sales of candles increased tenfold. Well, when you have a modern, industrialized economy, and all of a sudden the lights go out for prolonged periods of time, you start to have problems like that. In the city of Jilin, pardon my pronunciation, a state-owned water services provider sent out a message warning residents that power cuts of indeterminate length and indeterminate times, without plan, without warning, would be the norm until March. The company later deleted the statement and apologized for its unsuitable wording and inaccurate content. Yeah, you'll pardon people for getting a little bit worried if they say the power's going to go out. We don't know when it's going to go out. We don't know how long it's going to go out. We can't tell you when it's going to happen. No possible planning. No warning is going to come. Oh, and it's going to happen for the next 6 months. You might see how people might be a little worried about that. Say you're 60 years old or you're 70 years old and you live in the 8th floor of an apartment building. I can see how that might be a little inconvenient for some people. But besides making people's lives generally miserable, you also have to factor in mind that most of the world's crap, we'll say, is made in China, including Tesla and iPhones and Apple products. Not to call Teslas and Apple products crap. We're just saying stuff, we'll say. It's all made in China, folks. Well, now it's starting to hit a little close to home, isn't it? Because if we get disruption in the fabrication of, say, parts for iPhones, well, that could hit Apple. That could hit Apple's earnings. That could affect the S&P 500. That could affect my 401k. Well, now this is affecting everybody, isn't it? Let's read on a little bit here. Power outages in China have halted operations for some Apple and Tesla suppliers. Key manufacturing hubs have been hit by energy use restrictions as China works to cut emissions. Again, pardon my skepticism on the emissions thing. The energy shortage has caused over 10 semiconductor suppliers to halt productions for the month. Well, remember when Jerome Powell said that semiconductor problem was going to work its way through the system? It was going to be transitory? Well, get used to this semiconductors being short. So I guess we can't expect any resumption of normalcy in the U.S. automotive industry anytime soon. Moving on here, power outages hit chemical makers in China. Now we're hitting the chemical makers too. Okay, let's see what this one is all about. China's chemical sector is enjoying a profit surge, but continued prosperity is threatened by spreading power outages in the nation's attempt to control carbon emissions. China's Northern Bureau of Statistics says profits in the chemical industry rose 145% in the first 8 months of the year, nearly tripling the average industrial profit increase. Again, I'm a little skeptical of data coming out of China, and I'm also a little skeptical about their interest in the carbon emissions. But that streak could be coming to an end in recent days. At least a dozen stock market listed Chinese chemical manufacturers, ranging from fertilizer producers to polyester fiber firms, have announced production curtailments due to lack of electricity. You'll notice they said fertilizer producers in there. This could affect food stability in the world's most populous country. That's interesting. In addition, on September 23rd, the U.S. firm Celanese declared force majeure for several polymers after it was forced to shut down acidic anhydride and vinyl acetate facilities in Nanjing and Jiangsu province to comply with government orders. Nationwide, thousands of chemical factories could be impacted by power cuts, says China's Petrochemical News. Well, now we're getting into polymers and plastics. Everything, just about everything, is either made, wrapped, or packaged somehow in plastics. So I could see how this could make even more supply chain problems. Now, here's one that a lot of people probably haven't seen coming, but I found this interesting. Aluminum prices hit 10-year high as China looks to cut emissions. This was in September 1st. This is over a month old, this article. And I apologize for not catching this soon, because aluminum is a very big industry in China. And one of the reasons why aluminum prices have been so low for the last decade is because China has been dumping aluminum almost at a loss into a lot of markets. So, reading from this article, let's zoom in a little bit here. Aluminum prices on the London Metal Exchange hit a 10-year high Tuesday. Again, this is a month ago, extending a year-long vertical surge as demand rebounds and supply shrinks as smelters and top producer China face tougher power controls, stoking supplies and worries for the energy-intensive metal. So what does that look like? Well, look at this chart of aluminum prices, and yeah, there it is. Now, again, that article that I just read from about the aluminum was a month old. But it looks like the upward movement in the price has continued. This is a one-year chart of aluminum prices, and they've almost doubled for the year, and they look like they're going to keep going up. I mean, if the power outages in China are just now getting much worse, aluminum is one of the most energy-intensive industries in China, so it only stands to reason that aluminum will take a big hit by these power outages in China. Well, that's interesting. So, with that going on, how might we invest this trend? This is a good point for me to put in my butt-covering statement that I'm not a financial advisor. This isn't financial advice. Don't touch a trade based on what you heard from me. I'm nobody special. I want you to do your own research, your own DD, arrive at a decision that's right for you. And I also want to preface by saying I have not traded this yet. This is just a trade that I am looking at, that I'm interested in, because I'm still in cash-raising mode. I am not looking to buy more stocks right now. I'm raising cash. But that being said, one stock I'm going to keep an eye on for the foreseeable future is Alcoa. Alcoa is an American aluminum producer, and while Alcoa was the biggest victim of Chinese aluminum dumping into markets over the last 20 years or so, if you look at the last year, Alcoa has been the biggest beneficiary of the increase in aluminum prices. And now that China, their biggest competitor, is cranking down on the aluminum industry, well, this could be very big. And if you look here, Alcoa has gone from $12 to almost $50 in 1 year. Okay. Now, there's one thing I want to point out. Aluminum smelters and, these big foundries where large industrial metals are made, they are not so easily spun up and then turned off and then restarted again. When the power goes out at a big smelter, it could be a big problem, right? What if you've got a big vat full of liquid metal and the power goes out and that metal cools inside a giant crucible? Well, now you're hosed, right? Now you got to remelt everything. Who knows how much damage could be done to a facility like that? Now, again, I just want to emphasize that I am still in cash raising mode over here. And I want to also emphasize that I'm not a financial advisor. Don't touch a trade based on what you hear from me. But I do find the Alcoa story interesting right now. Even though Alcoa has had a monster run this year, if there's really looking at major disruption in the production of aluminum over in China, that could be very good news for Alcoa here in the U.S. And I also want to factor in mind that aluminum is not as much of a structural metal. I would be very hesitant to get into anything having to do with steel or copper or concrete right now, considering the collapse in building that's going on over in China. Well, aluminum doesn't really get used in skyscrapers and buildings and apartments the way steel does, right? Aluminum has a lot to do with cars and aircraft and other industrial applications. It's not really a structural metal. So that's just one reason why I think the Alcoa trade is interesting here. Again, I'm still raising cash. I haven't gone into that trade yet, and I want you to do your own research and your own DD, but that's one to keep an eye on. Anyways, folks, long story short, the supply chain problems are about to get a whole lot worse. Now we've got a loss of Chinese production to add on top of our congestion at U.S. ports and our lack of truck drivers and the ridiculous demand for crap caused by all the easy money policy in the U.S. So shortages of stuff, things being hard to get, that is just going to be a part of life for the foreseeable future, folks. Get used to it. All right, guys, that's all I got for you today. I want to thank you for your time and thank you for watching this video. Again, please hit that like button, subscribe to my channel, hit that notification bell. It really helped me out, keep this channel growing. I'd be forever in your debt. In the meantime, live small and dream big.